I loved hearing you say that one day you'll fly away because we have this certain hope. You might think I'm confused. You might think, wait a minute, Easter Sunday was last Sunday. But don't we know that the resurrection is the reality that we live in every day? Easter is not a 24-hour event. It's our life. It's our very hope. It's the foundation of why we are here, that Jesus Christ is found alive and risen. And not only that, but full of grace. He's not only full of his power to change things, the same power that raised Christ from the dead lives in us, but he comes with empathy and compassion. I want to invite you to turn to John chapter 20, and I want you to notice with me some of the details of a conversation that Jesus has with Mary of Magdala. And it's appropriate we do this. I'm planning to hang out in John 20 and 21 for the next few weeks. It's appropriate we do this. Did you know that historically the church as well has not treated Easter as one day? We have entered into a season historically on the church calendar called Eastertide. It's a 7-week season, and it culminates, of course, with Pentecost Sunday. So this year, that's June 9th. Now, I'm not advocating that you hide eggs and eat chocolate for 7 weeks. But I am encouraging you to be very mindful of the fact that Jesus Christ is still here. He is alive. So many times we celebrate Easter without this keen awareness, so many do anyway, that the real reason for our hope is the fact that Christ is risen. As we open to the book of John, you recognize that John is unique from the other Gospels. And one way that John is different is that John tends to record these extended conversations that he has with people. In other words, you see a comment, and then you see a question, and then you see an answer, and a question, and an answer. And this is all throughout the Gospel of John. That's what we're going to read here, Mary of Magdalene. By the way, did you notice I'm preaching on the same passage that I preached on last Sunday? Because I figure the halfback crowd can take this message. We are not done thinking about Easter. It's a dialogue, and there's some rich detail in this that I want us to pause with. Last week I talked more about what Easter is naturally and why we believe in Easter. In other words, what is the evidence for Easter? If you need an evidence sermon, you can look at it online or hear it that way. But this is more, I think, a how. A how. I want us to look at this conversation that Jesus has with Mary as a model for how to share the good news of the resurrection of Christ. After all, Christ is the one delivering the news himself. Do you love it? In a sense, Christ is the evangelist here. He's the one breaking the news to them. He is allowing Mary to recognize him. Mary, the very first person to discover the reality of Easter. It's right here in John chapter 20. And I want to invite you to listen for how he does that, how he allows Mary to sort of stay with her process of discovery. Would you stand with me as you're able? I'm reading from John chapter 20. I'm going to begin with verse 11. Mary's returned to the tomb. She's already been there when it was dark. She came back. Now Mary stood outside the tomb crying, and as she wept, she bent over to look into the tomb and saw 2 angels in white seated where Jesus' body has been, one at the head and the other at the foot. And the angels asked her, "Woman, why are you crying?" "They have taken my Lord away," she said, "and I don't know where they've put him." At this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing there, but she did not recognize that it was Jesus. Only John would do that. He's going to give you a little more of this. She did not recognize that it was Jesus. He asked her, I'm sure I'm behind or ahead on my slides. I don't know where I am. There it is. He asked her, no, I don't know where I am on my page. Here we are. Choose one or the other. Look up there or look down here. You make a decision. Woman, why are you crying? And by the way, that word woman, it doesn't come across the same way in English as it does in Aramaic. It's actually a very gentle term. It's a term of respect. Sounds different to us, I know. But woman, why are you crying? Who is it that you're here looking for? What an important question. Thinking he was the gardener, she said, Sir, if you had carried him away, tell me where you've put him, and I will get him. Jesus said to her, Mary. I love that it dawns on her who he is when he hears her say her name. She turned toward him and cried out in Aramaic, Rabboni, which means teacher, another familiar term of respect. Jesus said, do not hold on to me, for I have not yet ascended to the Father. So much we don't know about Jesus' resurrected form that we're curious about. One day we will. Go instead to my brothers and tell them, I am ascending to my Father and to your Father. That will happen in 40 days with the ascension. To my God and your God. Mary of Magdala, or Mary Magdalene. I still don't know where I am. Sorry. Maybe you can help me up there. There it is. Went to the disciples with the news. I have seen the Lord. And she told them that he had said these things to her on the evening of that first day of the week, when the disciples were together with the doors locked for fear of the Jewish leaders. Jesus came and stood among them and said, Peace be with you. After he said this, he showed them his hands and side. The disciples were overjoyed when they saw the Lord. May we too be overjoyed with our continued discovery that Christ is risen. You may be seated. John 20 and John 21 record for us the first conversations that Jesus had after rising from the dead. And the first, of course, is with Mary of Magdala, also known, of course, as Mary of Magdalene or Mary Magdalene. Some of you in just a couple of weeks will go with us to Magdala, and we'll show you where that is. Sorry I keep mentioning that. I'm just so excited about it. I can't wait. If you want to go back, we're planning to go back. You just let us know. That's how we ended up going on the first trip. People kept saying, we want to go. So if you want to go back, let us know. And we'd love to take you back. I'm going to stay here in these chapters just for a couple of weeks until Pentecost Sunday. And I want us to see a little bit from this conversation. I want you to notice 4 details that I think John is highlighting for us here. And I want to invite you to notice them with me. And again, I think that these offer some of the modeling of how, because Mary's instructed to go tell, right? We're instructed to go tell. That's our role. Easter's not over. People need to hear the good news of Christ. How do we do that? I want you to notice a few things out of this passage. Did I never show you that? I don't remember. Oh, here's where I'm going, by the way, with the series. There you go. It's okay. We'll get there later. 1, hope is discovered through patient endurance. I want us to take a moment to commend Mary for a moment for her faithful pursuit in spite of darkness. As we see from the first verses of John chapter 20, Mary's already made one trip on that first Easter morning, and she was absolutely confused when she found the tomb empty. She hurried back. She shared the news with the disciples. We learned that 2 of the disciples go then with her the second time. They're running. They head over there. We know that they're Peter and that they're John to check things out. Mary came back. They checked it out. They were confused. They left. She's left alone, clearly, before Christ appears to her. So a couple of things. Notice, 1, that Mary returned. Notice, 2, that Mary remained. Unfortunately, in this passage, we need to give Mary credit because the other 2 disciples kind of did the guy thing. They race toward the tomb. They look at what's there and they say, well, there's nothing more for us to see, so let's go have breakfast. And they leave. I think there's something to this, and I think John is pointing this out. He wants us to know that she went there the first time, and she went there the second time. And not only did she go there the second time, but she stayed there. So often, I'm convinced when God has something to say to us, we're just too impatient. We have a hard time sitting still. We have, okay, I asked the question, I didn't get an answer, so I'm done. I want us to notice, in the context of this, John takes a lot of verses to explain all of this. He didn't have to. The key thing is that Christ is risen. He's getting there, but he's helping us to see that it didn't happen instantly. And isn't that true for us too? Are you ever frustrated that you have someone that you're sharing your faith with and they don't get it right away? They just don't seem to get it right away. Well, have mercy on us, Lord, because none of us do. And in a way, once you've tasted Christ, once you have a sense of what life is like in Christ, I'm convinced that we almost forget what it was like before and the doubts that we had before, and that we too needed to go through a process, sometimes a long process, of discovering personally the reality of the resurrection. I don't want to make too much of it, but I just appreciate John's noting for us how persistent Mary was in this whole process. And then third, Mary herself also reviewed the evidence. It says that she too was studying what was going on here with the tomb. I think it's also worth noticing an extra thing that might be of encouragement for us as we share the good news with others, and that is that hope arrives despite our confusion. I also, and I think we're intended to have a little humor. I was glad some of you chuckled. Thinking he was the gardener, she has this conversation with the risen Lord. And to us, it's kind of an odd picture. We don't know why she didn't recognize him. Again, I think there are some things about his resurrected form we don't necessarily understand. I don't know if it was the bright light. I don't know if it was her tears. I don't know if it was the darkness of the morning. We just don't know. But I do know for us, sometimes our despair clouds our ability to recognize that Christ is present with us. And I think there's some application there. Isn't it good to know that Christ is still there even though we're hurt, or even though we are confused, even though it's dark? It does not mean that Christ isn't there. That's the fact, and that's the reality. And I stand here today to tell you that regardless of what you've experienced or the questions you have, the hurts that you have, I want you to know God is for you. And I know that that's a faith statement, because sometimes in life it doesn't feel like that. I have the assurance, because of Christ's resurrection, that he is for you and he is with you. And I picture this almost in a very gentle way, that Jesus doesn't just say, "Ta-da, here I am." He has a loving conversation with her. We have a hard time doing that sometimes with people we're eager to share our faith with. We come in there like Bible bulldozers sometimes. I had a conversation with somebody this week. As soon as they found out that I was a pastor, this was a funeral home employee, by the way. I'd never met him before. I met him this week. And immediately, within like 90 seconds, he was asking me what I believe about prevenient grace, whether or not you can lose your salvation. He wanted to know if I believed in the total depravity of humankind. I'm not kidding. And it's not that he's not well-intentioned, but it was the way I felt out of this conversation. I felt interrogated. I felt like he was putting me to the test to see if I understood the Bible correctly, AKA the way he does. And it's just the defensive mode that I was immediately on, and I'm a pastor. People feel that way when we have this need to just push ourselves at them. Not even Jesus in his resurrected form, revealing the most important news that humankind has ever received, stops and allows her confusion. He doesn't act all offended when she calls him the gardener. Sometimes we do. Sometimes when people question us or they don't understand where we're coming from, it just turns on that defensiveness. Our job is to share the good news of Jesus. And I believe that much of that is practicing the character of Christ before confused people. And not simply slamming them because they don't understand. I know there's a fine line between accepting something and condoning something and all that, and I get that. But so often Jesus has patience, patience, patience. The thing I notice about this resurrection appearance is that Jesus starts with a question. He doesn't just say, haha, here I am. He asks them, who are you looking for? I love that question. You know, there's so many people out there that simply need listening ears and listening hearts. They need you to serve them. They need you to care about the fact that they are in utter darkness. Think about Mary of Magdala's circumstance. We don't know a whole lot about Mary of Magdala, and there's been a lot of really unproductive speculation about who she was. You're familiar with it, right? The musical Jesus Christ Superstar portrays her really actually as someone who fell in love with Jesus and married Jesus and then started the first church. There's no historical basis for that, but in case you've heard some of those things, the Da Vinci Code. Oh, it was actually the Da Vinci Code where they got married. Anyway, Jesus Christ Superstar does have a song of Mary of Magdala where she's attracted to him. This is extra biblical kind of stuff, but what we do know of Mary is that she's in a very dark place as she comes to the tomb, because she stayed and witnessed the execution of Jesus. Did you know that it's said in Scripture of Mary of Magdala that Jesus healed her from, quote, 7 demons? We don't know what demonic possession necessarily looked like for her, but from other descriptions in the Scripture, you might think what you think of in modern terms as symptoms of mental illness. And what did people do with those possessed by demons in the first century? They rejected them. They outcasted them. They essentially left them as the disadvantaged population without a home. Not a lot has changed in 2,000 years. But we think about that. That was Mary of Magdala. Did you know that? Her life has been profoundly changed by meeting Jesus. With a word, it says, he healed her. We can only imagine her discouragement. It says she was crying. You notice that, right? We can only imagine the sense of despair and darkness and the coldness of that grave to her, that someone had further added insult to everything that had happened on Good Friday by stealing the body of Jesus. That's what she assumes happens. And I wonder too, is she wondering, will the demons come back? Because now Jesus is dead and now Jesus is not here. I want us to know as we attempt to share our faith with other people, every other person that you encounter this week, today, every person you're seated next, is going through a hard time in at least one area of their life. Count on it. And we've become pros at hiding our hurts from each other. It's hard to open up with the deepest wounds and the deepest shames and the hardest things. It's hard to do. We fear judgment. We fear that other people won't understand. I wonder how many of the followers of Jesus at this point, with the resurrection and time passing and traveling and everything else, really had no idea what Mary of Magdala's background was. I don't know. But we fear being completely open and completely vulnerable. This is the backdrop for the first Easter. It's an empty tomb and it's crying. And that doesn't sound like Easter bunnies and egg hunts and plaid colors, bright colors. I understand that. But the darker the dark in your life, the brighter the hope and the light of Jesus. I'm telling you, Mary's life is profoundly changed by this discovery. But God, I believe, lets us sit in our darkness to process it. The truth is, Jesus was there with you in your darkness, whether you recognized him or not. That's the hope that we have. And he has a bigger picture, and sometimes we're just uncomfortable sitting with people in their darkness. As I was thinking about Mary Magdalene and her distress, I was actually thinking a little bit about Les Miserables. It's a novel by Victor Hugo. It's a couple hundred years old, and of course it's been made into a fabulous musical as well as a movie. And if you've seen it or if you've read it, then you haven't, that's Anne Hathaway. Maybe you've seen, I mean, it's just so moving. But I couldn't help but to think how well this movie captures our need for endurance in this life and the hard things that come in this world. Do you remember the story? Fantine falls in love. She's pregnant and her lover leaves her. And the only way that she is left to take care of her child is to sell her teeth, to sell her hair, really to sell every other shred of dignity that she has with her body. And by the end, when the factory that she has to go to work for learns of her past, they kick her out. Do you remember all this? On top of it all, she has a terminal disease. Happy Easter, right? You get this. But it's also a story of redemption. When I think of Mary of Magdala, I think about the pain of life. And I think we need to hold on to that very, very hopefully, very gently, as we attempt to share with others the fact that Jesus Christ is present. Because the truth is, life has a way of killing our dreams. I hope that it's not as dramatic as Les Miserables. I trust that it isn't for you. But there are so many realities for us that are just difficult. Maybe you're watching your kids struggle in life. Unemployment, it stinks. You know, we just need to be able to say that, don't we? I know you're a Christian. I know that God's in control. But sit with somebody for a minute and grieve with them. That's what I see Jesus doing. Patient endurance. I've given you like half my sermon already, just so you know. So we'll just kind of go through these fill-ins as we go. Here we go. Let's see what's next. There it is. I think we need to notice that Christian hope begins with, actually, the historical event of Christ's resurrection. And this was a lot of the focus of last week's sermon. But I want us to note that Mary's despair indeed is changed, and she is about to be changed. Oh, see, here's where I'm supposed to talk all about Mary of Magdala. Now what am I going to talk about? I don't know. But I want us to know that something has to happen in order to change the trajectory of our hopelessness. Oh, look at that. She was healed by 70. If I would have waited till now, you could have had some really more interesting details on all of this, but you can't. Oh, well. Let's talk a little bit about hope. Let's talk a little bit about hope. Because the historical event of Jesus gives us a future hope. And to me, that's interesting. It's a hope for the future. Hope's always in the future, by the way. You know that, right? When you get to heaven, you won't have the hope anymore of seeing Jesus. Why? Because you're seeing Jesus. You only have the chance to hope right now. This is a limited time offer. You only have the chance to have faith right now. One day it'll just be sight and plain experience and everybody gets it. But right now, you have the opportunity. Teresa read that this morning, and now she's busy talking to kids about the resurrection appearances. She said, "Blessed are you because you believe without seeing." I love that. But it begins with something that happened in the past. Let's think about hope for just a minute. A dictionary definition is this: hope is a desire with the expectation of fulfillment. So Fantine, in her life, she certainly has hopes, just like all of us have hopes. We have dreams that we want to see fulfilled in this life. We all have a picture, whether we verbalize it or not, that we will always be well, we'll always be taken care of, we'll always be happy, our loved ones will always be well. It's just an unspoken thing that we have as people. And like I say, life does not always work that way in a post-fall of humanity world. We're bruised, we're broken, our teeth have been sold, our hair's cut, and in various ways, hope is hard to hang on to. In a worldly sense, Hope is a desire with an expectation for fulfillment, and that's all. Biblically, hope is a little different. Hope is a desire based on a promise from God. It's based on something. Hope is a desire based on a promise from God. Do you know what people around you probably need more than anything else from you? And I am saying it's not your advice. It's I know, that's hard to hear. Are you like me? You just love to give unsolicited advice. It's not that. What they need more than anything is hope. We just live in a hopeless world, don't we? That's one reason that I just love the tenor of this room when I walked in this morning. And I love that banjo music, I have to tell you. I'm emotional when the drums play. It means so much to me with the history of this church. They're just such a dear family. But I'm like you. I need to come in here and find some hope. It's so needed in this world. And I believe that the people around you, in their brokenness, in their darkness, sitting in their empty tombs weeping, they need hope. Do any of you know who Bobby Knight is? Yeah. I'm going to quote him as a source of truth. That may surprise you if you know who Bobby Knight is. Bobby Knight, of course, is the legendary basketball coach for the Indiana Hoosiers. He led them to 3 NCAA championship finals. He was the chair thrower. That's how you better know Bobby Knight, is he was the chair thrower. Let's just say he was very passionate. He was very passionate about all of that. He was famous among fans for all of that. And he wrote a book, Judy, did you know this, called The Power of Negative Thinking? Because it fits the chair throwing. He's after a reaction, and he gets one. According to Bobby Knight, hope in his book is the worst word in the English language. More shock value, right? He says, it's foolish and lazy to tell yourself that, quote, things are going to be all right. They'll only be all right if someone steps up and does something. I know, I don't want you to always agree with Bobby Knight. A strange source of truth, I get that, but I wonder if he's onto something here. And I want to put it this way based on a biblical definition of hope. I want to say, whoops, he's probably better at slides than I am. Can you go back one for me? There it is. Hope needs a reason. I agree. Hope for hope's sake is not enough. Hope that something in the future will change just so that I can be positive about it is not enough. Someone has to step up in order for us to have a hope with a foundation. The foundation of change for the Christian church. Otherwise, it ends right there on Good Friday. We may not even get the record of the embalmed bodies, everything else. It stops if Christ is not risen from the dead. Something historical happened that provides a foundation, a change of trajectory, that you and I may not just have hope, and hope is so important, but that we may have a grounded hope, a fact, a reason. Nobody else has defeated death as Jesus Christ has defeated death. It doesn't stop with him being a convicted criminal. It doesn't stop with the beatings and the accusations, the mockery. Christ is risen. And you and I today, we're the continuation of this. And until that day that Christ returns and parts the clouds and sets all of this upside down, this right side up again, we have hope for a future based on the sure fact of a historical event of the resurrection of Jesus. It's the same hope, it's the same foundation that Mary finds. And believe me, her life has changed. 3, here's something else I notice out of this. It's not just facts. 3, hope is a process of personal discovery. Here again, Jesus begins with the question, who is it you're looking for? And he doesn't stop there. He asks another question, why are you crying? And we're thinking, well, come on. That's kind of an obvious question, isn't it? So she says, are you the only person that doesn't know? They've taken my Lord. If you've taken him, you need to tell me where he is. And again, Jesus doesn't say to Mary, ta-da, it's me, Jesus, stop crying. Stop it. That's kind of what we tell people sometimes. It's okay. It's going to get better. We tell them pithy things, even though they're true. God has a plan and all of this. You know, a lot of times people don't need to hear that in the moment. If it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. Don't say that. Don't sing it for sure. Here's what I draw out of this, and I do take this, and I hope I'm taking it the right way. I do take this as somewhat of an example of sharing the good news of Christ with others. In someone else's grief, don't rush to the good news. I mean, in so many ways, we often have not earned with empathy, with genuine care, with sincere love. I'm not saying don't get around to the good news. Do that. It's based on a historical fact. People need to know that Christ has risen. Let your life show it. Let your empathy show it. Let them talk to you. There's so many people who are burdened. Is it any wonder we get nowhere with the gospel when we bulldoze them? We must give the space for someone to be human. And I just see Jesus doing that with his disciples. I love the story that I'm not going to get to in a couple of weeks about Thomas. And we read at the very end of John 20 right there that they touched him and his wounds. Did you know that Thomas wasn't there on the first Sunday? He was gone. And I can only speculate he was gone because he was so discouraged. I don't know why, but he wasn't there. And so a full week later, see, this is a 40-day period of Jesus being resurrected and appearing to these people. He speaks separately to Thomas. And do you know what he invites him to do? He says, put your hand in my side. He's so patient with Thomas. He doesn't say, because you missed it, you missed it. You should have been there. Well, for crying out loud, he walked through a wall to get to the disciples because they were hiding. They had all rejected him. They were afraid that they themselves would be crucified. But Jesus doesn't say, I'm going to go find somebody that's faithful. He goes to them. He doesn't rush their process of confusion and grief and disorientation and even fear. He speaks grace to them, and he shows it to them. I kind of wish that all that I ever had to do was prove theology, because I like to argue. I mean, I know that's not good, but you know, if you're wrong, you're wrong. And I think I can show you that. In love, in the name of Jesus, I could show you that. Jesus says Mary. Did you notice that? That's when she realizes who this is. The last thing then, personal discovery. Well, that was it, personal discovery. It's a term of Mary and woman. They're terms of endearment, and she gives him a term of endearment and respect back, Rabboni. In other words, the truth is evidence, and it's also experience. It's something empirical, it's something that happened, it's something that's historical, but it's also something personal. And you and I cannot force other people to believe what they don't believe. We can't be the Holy Spirit in somebody else's life. We can't. And it's not healthy that we try. It's hard sometimes to love someone unconditionally as they are at an empty tomb kind of an experience, or making empty tomb kind of decisions, death decisions in their life. It's hard to do. But for Mary, and I think we need to be encouraged, for every other person since then, it's not only a matter of being convinced in the mind, it's about Jesus speaking to the heart. And I want you to know that as you pray for your loved ones, as you wait in expectation for them to make the great discovery that Christ has risen and that he's alive for them, I want you to know God is there through the walls. Nothing that they have done has been able to prevent God's relentless pursuit of their heart. And just like you, at some point, they will know this is God speaking to me. This is personally my invitation. And I want to encourage you, and I want to commission you as a church, maybe especially in this Eastertide season. As you share this good news, it just could be that Jesus has put people in your path, and they need to see Jesus through you first before they will possibly be ready for the truth that we're so eager to share. It's evidence and it's experience. And if you want to put it this way, hope is a who. I wrote this and thought, for fear of sounding like Dr. Seuss, hope is always embodied in a person. Jesus' resurrection proves that he is stronger than any setback, any failure, any loss, any disappointment, any history. Even though life has a way of killing dreams, Jesus has a habit of producing resurrection of those dreams. I noticed Mary didn't get exactly what she wanted. She wanted Jesus to be back just the same way that he'd always been back. And he says, you can't do that. You can't hang on to me. We left poor Fantine dying in the street. Victor Hugo wrote Les Miserables to expose what he called the great evils of his time: poverty, the exploitation of women and children, and spiritual darkness. And in the way that he wrote this, he pulled no punches. Fantine ends up dying of her illness. And isn't that true in our world? There's so much in the temporary that is not right and should not go the way that it goes. And we struggle for answers with that. Tears are real in this world. But someone is there. Jean Valjean takes Cosette into his protection, the little girl. He raises her, Fantine's daughter, and years later delivers her into the arms of a fine young man. And as Valjean dies at the end of a long, good life, Fantine's spirit returns to usher him into heaven. And the musical ends with great reunion. One day, I'll fly away. And all the characters are singing. They didn't sing as well as we did today. I'll fly away. But if you listen to the musical, will you join in our crusade? Will you be strong and stand with me? There's a future about to start when tomorrow comes. It's a song of hope. Shall we pray? Jesus, we've gathered here and even opened your word in faith because we are declaring you as our hope. And Lord, especially in those times that it's hard to hope, Lord, fix our eyes, our focus, our hearts squarely on yourself. We confess that not just circumstantially, but one day, when you come back, or when we pass away first, you alone are our hope. And we ground our hope in the sure fact of your love for us, your promises, and your resurrection. As we are in this bowed moment of prayer, if there's anyone here who has never surrendered their heart to Jesus, I want to invite you, if you hear his voice, would you respond to him? Even in this moment, you can welcome him to live in your life and live in your heart. It's the hope that we have in spite of any past, any fear, any confusion. Jesus is here. If this prayer matches the desire of your heart for commitment, please pray silently with me. Jesus Christ, today I welcome you into my life. And I thank you that you know all about whatever darkness I'm carrying. the hurts, the burdens. Lord, thank you that you are willing to sit with me in my doubts. Today, I believe I've heard from you and I need you. If that's true for you, would you tell him? Would you invite him in? Lord, I know of others who say that they have received you, whose lives I respect and look up to. Jesus, teach me what it means to follow after you. In Christ I pray. Amen. Let's take a couple of moments for some reflection. This is time where we recognize indeed that Christ is present. He can not only speak to all of us in a certain way, I believe he speaks to our heart personally. So we just want to invite you to quiet your heart and mind. Listen to the fact that Christ is here. If the Lord gives you something that is for all of us, we want to invite you to be faithful, to indicate that by standing or raising your hand, and we have a microphone for you to share that all can hear. Let's start just by taking a few minutes to reflect before our closing song and before our benediction.